Hey everybody, it's Angel from Halo Inspirations. We give you inspirations to help you spread beauty and joy through your quilting journey. Happy Friday to each of you. Happy Fun Friday. And we all know it's Fun Friday because we are still engaged in the BF Quilt Along put on by Kimberly Jolly of Fat Quarter Shop and Lori Holt of My Bonnet. Two BFFs in our quilting industry. They have put this beautiful pattern together, and we are engaging in the fun of all of it. So what is this week? Well, this is the final week of our quilt along, and that entails putting the whole thing together to create your beautiful quilt topper. Now, I don't actually have the quilt. My BF quilty friend, Vicki Holloway of My Creative Corner 3, we did this together, and she wanted to piece it all and quilt it. So, and bind it. Can't forget the binding, right? So I said, well, you can have it. You can keep this beautiful treasure. Now, I may not have the quilt, but I got a picture and I'll throw it up here, one of these places. So you can see this beautiful work of art. And gosh darn, she did a fantabulous job. And that quilting, spot on, just like we always expect. Now, there's a couple of things, even though I don't have the quilt, there is a couple of things that I want to suggest or to talk about, especially for those who are new to foundation paper piecing. So the first one is taking all of your blocks and putting them together. Now, they're perfect in size. And we talked about that they're so much fun because you're stitching on a line and you don't have to worry about your 1/4 inch seam. Well, that is all very true. These are 6.5 inches unfinished. Inside your quilt, we will lose that 1/4 inch along each side. However, if you are a beginner quilter or even a experienced quilter who struggles at times with their 1/4 inch seam, that doesn't really help you put those together. In this situation, what's really neat about this particular pattern is there's not a lot of points, but there are a few. For instance, the economy blocks, they don't have anything to line up, if I can remember correctly, which is a good thing, where you're going to have to meet points, but you don't want to lose your point here. And there is a 1/4 inch seam line that we cut away from, but if your 1/4 inch on your machine isn't the same 1/4 inch, you may lose that point. Okay, now this is just one example that I'm talking about, and like I said, I only saw a few places inside the pattern that you may have some points that need to line up. But thinking of that, understanding that in fact we have not sewn a 1/4 inch, we never worried about our 1/4 inch seam because of the lines, I wanted to give a couple suggestions on how, if you do struggle with your 1/4 inch, a couple of things that you can do to help that. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring you in a little bit closer, and it's only going to be for a short time, but I'm going to show you a couple of methods, okay? And the bottom line is you can leave the paper on or you can take the paper off. Those are basically your couple of options, right? That's all we got. And I tend to leave my paper on until I get ready to sew all the pieces together, so they help keep that stability, and then I'll sit and take the papers off. However, just in case, there is one other thing that some foundation paper piecing people, quilters, man, say that fast 5 times, like to do. So I'm going to bring you in just for a few minutes here, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about some other things that I'd love to share with you. So I'll see you up close in just a second. Okay, so I will be honest with you, I have used this method once. It's not my preferred method because if you leave the paper on, I'm going to show you that first. If you leave the paper on, you got a lot of stuff going on. You got 2 pieces of paper plus your fabric. So it's not my preferred method. And then once you're done sewing along that line, you have this really tiny piece that you will have to rip. Couple of them actually, right? And I've never done it with an entire quilt. I've just done it with one block. but it is a method that some FPP quilters do use. So I wanted to give it to you and show you basically how it works. But this would be leaving your paper on to do this. So the first thing I would do is I'd line up my papers together, okay? And I start to pin. And when I pin, you want to go in on this end, okay? And when you come out, see, that's not completely lined up. But when you come out, and you got to make sure your fabric's good too. So you can go in one side, and when you come out, you want to go in that same point. Well, this is an interesting angle I'm trying to do, okay? And then we know they're lined up correctly. And you might want to put one in the middle. And then you would just simply put this under your needle, and I would put a block like this. See, I'm doing this to a courthouse step. There's nothing really to match, okay? And there's no points that I'm going to chop off. So I would put it on this end, even if the paper was off. And I would start to sew right along this line, and that way you can see where your point is so you won't lose it, making sure you go down straight down that line. So this is one method, but if you don't want to do that, I completely understand. It's not my favorite. I just wanted to give that to you and explain it to you, especially if you had two blocks that really had some necessary points, right? Because if your 1/4 inch seam isn't on, no matter what kind of block you're doing, it can make a mess. So another option I had, all is not lost yet. I'm going to bring you into my sewing machine, but basically you would use this line as your guide to where your 1/4 inch seam is, because we know that this is supposed to be the 1/4 inch seam. We sewed the seam and cut the 1/4 inch off, right? So we know this was all right. We didn't have to worry about the 1/4 inch seam. Well, we know that this block was designed with this being the 1/4 inch seam. So I'm going to take you into my sewing machine for just a second, and I'm going to show you how you can actually line up using your sewing machine and getting your 1/4 inch seam on point. Okay, so I brought you in a little closer to my sewing machine so you can actually see exactly what I'm talking about. Now we know that this line right here is in fact a 1/4 inch seam from the paper according to the designer of the paper, okay? But we want to make sure our machine matches this 1/4 inch seam. So if you struggle, this is another idea. You can very simply take your block and line it up underneath your machine, okay, where your needle is going to be in a straight line along your machine, just like if you were going to stitch it. Okay, once you get it lined up where you want, and it's taken me a second, I apologize, guys. Okay, that'll work. What I do is I use my seam guide. Y'all have seen this before, Guideline Seam Guide. Love this thing. You could use other seam guides, but you're just going to simply line it up along this edge. You could use painter's tape too in this situation. And now I know when I stitch this, I'm going to be stitching on that 1/4 inch according to the paper. So I simply remove this, take one row of paper off, and I've got my 1/4 inch seam lined up, ready to stitch. You can also use, if you have a Sew Very Smooth guide, you can line that up. When the paper's underneath, you can use painter's tape, you can use a credit card, or even if you have a machine where you can move your needle and you know the line that you line up on your, I don't have one of those machines, so I'm only guessing, you know, that you line it up on the line that says a 1/4 inch, and you move your needle with your machine to make sure that it lines up along this line. That'll ensure that your 1/4 inch is on and ready to go. I just wanted to share a couple of ideas with you if you are struggling with that 1/4 inch seam, because, you know, yes, it does make a perfect block, but then you got to put them all together. And I don't think many people talk about that. And if it's a struggle, you can cut off some points or have some issues, because it's real hard to nest with foundation paper piecing because your seams are all different. So I just wanted to share that with you. I hope it's helpful. Again, my preference is to take the paper off. I have done it once and it just isn't my favorite method, but people do use it. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. Now, the next part of this is just a little bit more meat, the things I want to talk about with you. So one of the ways that you can make a pattern your own, and we all realize this, is that we choose our own fabrics. But another way to make it your own is to change up the blocks and how they are positioned and where they're positioned at. So speaking of that, I'm going to throw a picture up here. Here is the actual design of Lori Holt and Kimberly Jolly's pattern. And as you can see, we all can see the big star that it all forms. So making sure that you're placing the types of blocks in those places will allow you to build that overall star. Now, if you look in the center, and I've got many pictures here that I've done for you. And again, I cannot draw a straight line, just like I can't sew one. So bear with the pictures here. But in that center, you'll see a pinwheel, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And what it also does is it inside another secondary pattern that I see are hearts. And I don't know if it was on purpose with Lori Holt and Kimberly Jolly. I have no earthly idea, but I love looking at all those hearts inside around the center. And I just love that part, especially since it's best friends, right? I mean, what a really neat secondary pattern inside of that pattern. Well, here again is a picture of our quilt, and Vicki, because she pieced it, wanted to make it her own. And so what she did was she took that center and played with various different centers that she could do. And of course she took pictures, which I highly encourage when you do this. Lay them all out, lay all your blocks out, and when you start to manipulate and change things, take pictures. And of course, because we're many states away, she would send me the pictures to get thoughts, but I basically let her, whatever made her happy, because she's keeping the quilt. That was the bottom line. Now, we may have lost the pinwheel in the middle, and because of that, we've actually lost the hearts. But what we did gain is 2 diamonds, okay, inside of that square. And I think that looks phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, and very creative, and a nice way to put a nice twist on a pattern and making it your own. And if you'll notice, in this next picture, I circled one of the pineapple parts of the block, and there's 4 of them, right? But I just circled one little part that looks like an arrow's pointing towards the center. So you have 4 of those. And it actually creates it a whole nother secondary pattern that I absolutely love. When I stood back and looked at it from far away, I love how it turned out. So I'm going to throw that up here. So you've got the 4 little parts of the pineapple blocks that are pointing towards the center. You've got the diamond, but if you extend it a little bit, it actually adds an element that brings you in towards the center of that block, but still allowing the star to be there, and it gives you such a pleasing look when you look at the whole thing. So I just wanted to share that because that is something you can do with any pattern. Lay them all out and start moving them in different places to see what secondary type patterns you might find, maybe something that's more pleasing to your eye, because you have to be happy with your quilt by the end of the day. And taking those pictures, because as you move on, you may forget how to get back to one of the ones. And it also allows you to put it in black and white so you can see how the colors are working together. It allows you to sit and ponder on it. Flip through your phone and look at those, or whatever you're doing. You know, you could have taken it on a regular camera. So just however it is that you take those pictures, you can look at them and think which pattern you like the best. And it may be where you started off as, but it's a fantabulous way to really make your quilt your own. And I loved what she did. Now bringing that to what she did with the end there and making it her own. There are other people that have also been stitching along, and I will put, it's in the final week for putting them all together. You can see all the different quilts that were pieced and quilted, and it's in their blog on the Jolly Jabber. So the link for that is down below, and it's week 5. Okay, but I have also listed all the other ones for you, and if you're interested, this is a free pattern that Fat Quarter Shop has offered, and it in the introduction one, in the very beginning blog, it tells you all the requirements, to include the papers and how much fabric and the fabric that they used. But I wanted to give you a heads up on that. There are a lot of really creative quilts out there that are just amazing and inspirational on different color ideas. Even it was they're absolutely gorgeous, and I know a lot of us just had so much fun doing this, so I encourage you to go take a peek. But that is the final Friday. That is the final Fun Friday. I hope if you were sewing along that you have enjoyed it as much as we have. And I know Vicki would too, both of us would just love to see your finishes and what you ended up doing to make it your own. But I will definitely be here here on YouTube on Wednesday. We are starting a rag quilt t-shirt style quilt. Rag t-shirt style quilt. I don't know, however you want to say that. We're going to start a 3-part series on Wednesday, so I'll be back here on Wednesday. I will be on Facebook Live today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for any, I call it live quilting and answers, but any questions that you may have or comments and just some chit chat about the final Friday and how things are coming along. If you have any questions or comments, don't ever hesitate to drop them down below. We love hearing from you. But, you know, it's another great project to put in the not UFO bucket, but a beautiful, treasured finish that Vicki and I have decided to call Friends Under the Same Star. So I want to publicly thank Vicki Holloway of My Creative Corner 3 for allowing the opportunity to have another fantabulous project to do with you. You are definitely one of my best quilty friends. But until next time, guys, may y'all continue to be inspired, productive, and ever so joyful. And may y'all continue and never stop making your dreams in quilting come true. I love y'all. See y'all soon.